communication issues, keeping it short, even with practice, we still struggle to having a relationship with someone we like, talking to people doesn't last that long, going on outings, sometimes alone, sure is upsetting, but I'm sure we're fine, talking to our friends, can have some issues, constantly asking the same questions to them. Who am I? I'm a human too. I'm just like you with ASD. Who am I? I'm a human too. I'm just like you with ASD.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Autism Stories, where we connect you with amazing people that help teens and adults with autism become more independent and successful. I'm your host, Doug Bletcher, the founder of Autism Personal Coach. Each morning when I wake up, I let my dog Eli outside, and he dashes out there as if this is the first time in his life he has been outside. And then I go ahead and make myself a cup of coffee. I will not think much about food until probably a couple hours later when my stomach starts to growl and reminds me, Doug, you probably should eat something. And that's really what we're going to talk about today. The sensory system that you need to know about interoception. The sense that helps us feel what is going on inside our body. Today we will talk with Kelly Mahler about this. Kelly earned her master's degree in occupational therapy as well as a post-professional pediatric certificate from Misericordia University in Dallas, PA. My apologies if I butchered the name of that university. She's currently a doctoral student there as well, and she has been an occupational therapist and autism consultant for over 17 years, serving school-age children and adults. Kelly is also adjunct faculty in the Department of Occupational Therapy at Elizabethtown College. She is actively involved in several research projects pertaining to interoception. Kelly is an international speaker and presents frequently on topics related to the 5 books she has authored. We hope you enjoy today's conversation. Kelly, thanks for joining us today.
Oh, thanks for having me. I'm really excited to be here.
So I wanted to start out with kind of where your story starts with the autism community. How did you initially get involved in working with people with autism?
Well, I'm an occupational therapist by trade, and about 16 years ago, I started working in the school setting, and I ended up, through that experience, meeting my very first student that at the time was diagnosed with what we called Asperger's syndrome. And I just immediately was drawn to this student. He had so many amazing qualities, and he was so smart, and I just really was drawn to him and really wanted to support him and help make school an easier place for him to be. Honestly, I have to say we knew very little about how to support individuals with autism. And that experience of getting to know the student, he really changed my life and taught me so much. And it was a really great collaboration together. And from that point in time, I just was really became passionate about helping support individuals with autism. So slowly over the last 16 years, my caseload, I worked with all different types of children and adults, but it slowly over time has become become more and more specialized to supporting individuals with autism or autistic people. So that's pretty much it in a very simple nutshell of how I got involved in the autism community, and I feel so lucky and blessed. I have one of the best jobs ever, and I get to know some of the best people ever in my job. So I think it was definitely the right path for me.
So it's often discussed about the impact of sensory systems on those that have autism, and commonly we'll talk about sound, smell, sight, touch, and taste. However, interoception, a sensory system that I know is really important, is rarely discussed. For those that may be unfamiliar, what exactly is interoception?
Yeah, I think that's a really great question, a very important question. Interoception is slowly gaining more focus and exposure, and it is a sense, like you mentioned, just like smell, sound, and taste, but it just has a slightly different job. And interoception allows us to be able to feel sensations coming from the inside of our body. So for interoception, each sensory system works in the same way, where it has a set of receptors that's in charge of pulling in information. So like for your sense of sight, your eyes are the receptor pulling in information about all that you see around you. Or for your sense of sound, your receptors are the ears pulling in information about all the sounds you hear around you. And so interoception has a set of receptors that work just the same way, pulling in information. And these receptors are located extensively throughout the inside of your body. So you have receptors for interoception in like the lining of your stomach, in your heart, in your intestines. They're in your lungs, they're in your skin, they're in your bones, or even in like the whites of your eyeballs. And these receptors are continually pulling in information about how all of these different body parts are feeling. So for example, the receptors in the lining of your stomach pulling in information about how your stomach is feeling. So is it gassy? Is it nauseous? Is it fluttery? Is it growling? So being able to feel all of these internal sensations due to interoception and with the help of interoception is really, really important for our ability to do many different parts of life, including being able to know exactly how we're feeling. So if you notice that your stomach is growling, you then can figure out that you're hungry. And then in turn, you can do something about that feeling. You can regulate the feeling of hunger. So interoception, we're learning more and more through a lot of the research that's taking part in neuroscience and in medicine, that interoception is an extremely important sense to our human experience.
And in addition to interoception being important in regulating oneself, are there other skill areas that interoception affects?
Yeah, I mean, I think that probably the biggest one and why interoception's getting so much more attention lately is the connection between being able to regulate our emotions, because you have to know exactly how you feel in order to do something about it.
Right.
And also often our self-regulation programs, our approaches for managing anxiety, we kind of take for granted the person automatically knows exactly how they feel. They just need to know what to do about it. So what we're finding is in people with poor interoception, they have a really hard time figuring out how they feel, which in turn affects their self-regulation. But like you said, interoception doesn't just influence self-regulation. It also is at the foundation of our ability to take for perspective taking. And what research is finding, I find this really, really interesting, is that in order for us to understand how someone else is feeling in the moment intuitively, that we have to understand how we're feeling in the moment first.
Right.
And people that are more in touch with how they are feeling can then in turn take perspective of someone else and understand how they're feeling. And what lies at the heart about the science of it is interoception. Interoception helps us to know how we feel so that we can understand how other people feel. Interoception is found to affect a lot of other areas like flexibility of thought, our just core self-awareness, like understanding like this is me, this is my body, this is how I think and feel. It's at the core of that. And it's at the core of so many different areas. when I first learned about interoception, I really had no idea just how important it was. And over the last 8 years through my research, it's just really, quite frankly, been mind-blowing. And there's new stuff coming out every day about what we're learning about this sense and how important it is. And what I like about it a lot is, I think traditionally, like as an occupational therapist, I have a strong mental health background, and mental health is like so rooted in the brain and cognitive therapies, and we kind of just forget about the body, like it's not there. And we're learning through the science behind interoception that the body is a really important aspect of mental health. We really need to include it in our interventions and supports that we're providing.
And I think on your website, MahlerAutism.com, I saw a visual that I thought would be helpful to people. It's a body check chart to identify some of these body signals to help you understand maybe why you're anxious or why you're feeling whatever you are. Could you talk about this chart and how it can be used effectively?
Yeah, sure. There's a really great free explanation on my website for people that prefer seeing us visually, but it has been a really successful, it's probably one of our most popular strategies, and the way it has a body outline, and you can make it in many different ways. If a person that likes to laminate and use Velcro, you can do a laminated Velcro version where you make a different series of icons. Each icon represents a different body part. And so the way that the body check chart helps is just a visual guide for really going through different body parts and thinking about how they're feeling in the moment. And you pick the icon, the body part icon that matches the way that you're feeling in that moment. This probably will make a lot more sense if you check out the free information on the body check chart. But we're trying really hard to take a very abstract concept such as interoception and bring structure, make it concrete, and really break it down into little pieces and slowly over time build to the big picture of helping an individual notice the way their entire body feels. So we start out by teaching them how to notice like one body part at a time. So like they're on their body check chart, week 1, they'll start out with just like their hand icons. Then so week 1, we're practicing noticing the way that all the different ways their hands are feeling during the day. And then week 2, we add on to the body check chart and we add the feet icons. And then so week 2, they're thinking about, okay, how do my hands feel right now, and how do my feet feel right now? And so we slowly build over time to being able to check the entire body, which has been very successful. There's a couple other things that go into making a body check chart successful, and we actually are coming out with a brand new book. It's called the Interoception Curriculum. It's due out in the end of January, and that is a step-by-step guide to developing interoception, and the body check chart is a part of that, but there's other strategies that support the effectiveness of the body check chart. A lot of times you can't just, I see people making this mistake, and it's because it's new, we're all making mistakes and learning from each other, but a lot of times people will just give an individual body check chart and expect interoception to just magically develop, and there's a lot of other pieces we need to think about to making that process successful. So that's all outlined in the new interoception curriculum.
So for those that don't have a lot of awareness in terms of picking up their body signals, what strategies can be used to help them with this?
Yeah, so what we're finding, if I'm putting this in a very easy way of understanding, is that there's 2 main categories of interoception challenges, and we see some individuals that really struggle at noticing the way that their body feels, or noticing their internal sensations, and they completely miss internal sensations. Like they might completely miss that their stomach is growling, and they can go for 2 days without eating, or they might miss that their voice is getting louder, and their heart is starting to race, and their muscles are getting tight, and so they miss those building signs of anxiety. Or we have individuals in the same group that they don't notice the way their body feels until it's really an intense feeling. So they don't notice they're getting anxious until they're in a full anxious meltdown, or they don't notice they're getting hungry until they're, like my teenage clients like to call they're hangry, where they're like so hungry, they're irritable and angry. So for these individuals, we really need to work on teaching them to start to notice the way their bodies are feeling. And we talked previously about the body check chart. It's a really great strategy for these people. And also really just bringing to light, just helping them to slow down and giving them a very structured way of starting to pay attention to certain body parts and discovering the way that their body is feeling. And then what we see is that it's not just enough to support these individuals in noticing their internal sensations, that for some individuals, they have to be supported in figuring out what their internal sensations mean. So, for example, I was supporting a sixth grader, and we were working on noticing the way his body was feeling, and he told me that the one day when I was making up for OT that he noticed a new feeling in his body that morning, and he woke up, and he said it felt like there was a gallon of milk sitting on his stomach, and I was like, wow, like that's a really great, that he noticed. But then I said, well, what do you think that feeling meant? And he just looked at me really puzzled. He said, I have no idea what that feeling meant. So he had to be systematically taught that feeling meant that he had to go to the bathroom. Mm-hmm. And so we are using strategies that target noticing body sensations and then also giving the sensations meaning and building these like really tight body emotion connections, which are essential to self-regulation.
And on the other end of what I kind of think of it as an interoception spectrum, there are people who are overly aware of the way they feel and what's going inside their body. So for these people, like what can be done to help them determine what are some of the most important signals to pay attention to instead of paying attention to every single last signal?
Yeah, that's a great question. So we talked about in the previous question about the people that are underaware of their internal sensations, but like you said, there are people that are overly aware, and there's so many different things. And ironically, and kind of the good news, I think, for intervention purposes, is that what we're finding is that similar interventions are working for both groups of people. So for those individuals that are overly aware of their internal sensations, they describe a lot of times their inner experience as very chaotic and messy. It's hard to really make sense of what's going on. So again, slowing things down, breaking things into different body parts and teaching them to slowly go through and check how each body part is feeling gives a lot of organization to their chaotic internal experience, which is very grounding for them, and being able to kind of give meaning to those internal sensations also helps to reduce their anxiety, which tends to slow things down internally as well for these people. So both the body check chart will work for both of these individuals, and also the other strategies that are included in our interoception curriculum.
And I imagine interoception it's not like you learn a skill and it's mastered. It seems like it's an ongoing daily skill that you need to work on.
Absolutely. And what research is finding is that working on interoception is good for all of us. It's not just something that people with autism should do, or people with anxiety should do, or people with depression should do. It's really good for all of us. I think just the daily grind of the way that we live in our culture, we're so fast-paced, our attention is continually just directed outside, especially with the whole all the screens and technology, and we kind of ignore the way our bodies are feeling. Our bodies send us really important information and signals, and so it is really important to work on a daily basis to listening to your body, and it's important for our health, it's important for our well-being. So I think it's really good for all people.
And I've learned through the years that like mindfulness is a great way to kind of slow things down and pay more attention to in the moment and to our bodies. And I heard you recently talk about mindfulness in relation to becoming more aware of your interoception system. So could you give your definition of mindfulness and maybe some specific mindfulness activities you could recommend to help with this?
Sure. Well, mindfulness, if you ask 10 different people to define mindfulness, you'll probably get 10 different definitions. That's
right.
all I'm really talking about in regards to interoception. It's our ability to pay attention, specifically paying attention to our bodies in the present moment without judgment. And right now, mindfulness is the most evidence-based intervention for improving interoception. There's not a lot of other evidence-based interventions out there right now saying that they're effective at improving interoception. There's a lot coming out of the mindfulness field showing that they're having a lot of positive benefits to improving our interoceptive awareness. So I think it's really encouraging, and mindfulness obviously has a lot of benefits, including improving interoceptive awareness, but the drawback of mindfulness for a lot of my clients is that mindfulness is really, really hard, and it's really, really abstract, and if you throw in the fact that you're asking someone to pay attention to their body in a certain way, and they're really not in touch with their body to begin with because they have this underlying interoceptive awareness difficulty, you're asking them to do something that is really, really challenging. Mm-hmm. And so that's where we're coming at from all the strategies that we're developing. We're taking mindfulness-based activities and making them visual and concrete and breaking them into small chunks. So that's really where the body picture came from. There's a strategy for mindfulness called a body scan. And if you Google free body scan scripts, you can find a lot of these. You can try out different ones to find one that works for you. But what it is usually someone reading a script aloud, and it sequentially guides you through thinking about your different body parts and how each body part is hard to do, especially if you have poor interoceptive awareness. So we're trying to break these strategies down, like I said, and make them easier and build up to the ability to be able to do some of these more traditional mindfulness-based activities.
Right. And I know you've written a book all about interoception called Interoception, the Eighth Sensory System. If someone wanted to get a copy of this book, how would they go about doing so?
You can visit my website at mahlerautism.com, and there's links to my books on there. So the Interoception, the Eighth Sensory System that you just mentioned, that is the first book that I wrote on the topic, and it really gives as simple as possible overview of what science tells us about interoception and all the different areas that interoception impacts in our lives. And it gives some really practical strategies at the end of the book. And then the follow-up book to that, it will be the interoception curriculum. That takes an even deeper dive into the interventions and provides more of a process to use if you're interested in improving or supporting some of the interoception development.
Well, Kelly, I really want to thank you for being here today and talking and educating us about interoception.
Oh, yeah, thank you for having me. It was a pleasure.
Thank you, everyone, for listening. I was really thrilled to interview Kelly because so often I see teens and adults not paying attention to the signals their bodies give them, and helping them to be aware of these signals and then take action regarding them is really so important. And so often teens and adults with autism struggle with anxiety and as a result don't have success in their lives, and interoception is certainly playing a role in this. Autism Personal Coach is a unique service in that we help those with autism by working on meaningful, individualized goals in the setting in which they'll be used so their anxiety is greatly reduced, and as a result they become much more independent and successful. To get an autism coach for a loved one or yourself, it's very easy. All you have to do is email autismpersonalcoach@yahoo.com or call 216-336-5889 and request a coach today. On next week's episode of Autism Stories, we will talk with Bill Fenvers about the power of volunteering for those on the autism spectrum. Talk to you then.